Hey guys, so here is a handstand tutorial, which I am so excited to share with you, because I just love handstands. Anyways, I am going to emphasize more in this tutorial the stacking aspect of handstands and actually how, I'm going to obviously demo how to do the pose, but there's just so many different ways to get into handstand that I just feel like it's more important to emphasize the stacking of it. So your hips above your shoulders, and the alignment aspect of it, and a few of the little cues that you can do for your hands that is to actually show you like the 10,000 different ways to get into handstand, because there's hops, there's tucks, there's down dog hops, there's forward fold hops, there's puppy press, there's just so many different ways to get into it that I just feel like this tutorial would be super long if I did that. So I'm just gonna, like I said, emphasize the alignment portion of it, and I will show you from handstand hops. So handstand hops being from a standing split or a warrior 3 type setup, instead of showing you the 10,000 different ways. So like I said, alignment in handstands is essential. It is so important because if your alignment is off ever so slightly, that can cause you to fall. It can cause you to not be able to balance on your hands. And so that's why it's just so important. And when you first start out, obviously the goal in any handstand is to be perfectly straight up, stick straight, hips stacking directly above your shoulders, shoulders stacking directly above your wrists, no banana back, back straight, and perfect, straight line. However, that's not always super accessible when you first start out. And even when you've been practicing for a while, that might not be super accessible if you have tight hamstrings that pull on your lower back. So you have a baby banana back. If you have tight hip flexors, if you have tight back muscles even, like if there's any sort of tightness in your body, it can cause your handstand to not be perfectly straight because your muscles are pulling on your hips, they're pulling on your lower back, and it's causing you to have a baby banana back. So don't sweat that. That's something that I don't feel like you should sweat when you first start out, and you should just focus more on getting on your hands and balancing. But one thing that you should sweat and you should worry about is the stacking aspect. You should get your hands stacking directly underneath your shoulders, which are stacking directly above your elbows. So elbows, wrists, and shoulders are one long straight column. And then moving up the column, your hips are stacking directly above your column of your wrists, shoulders, and elbows. So essentially, your wrists from your hips down, stacking, one on top of the other, like a sandwich, like an Oreo, like a totem pole, whatever you want to think of it, they're all stacking one on top of the other. And with your hands in handstands, there's 3 different ways that you want to be doing it. You can either actively press your hands down into the mat. You can just kind of have your fingertips down on the mat with your palms open slightly away from the earth. Or you can just kind of have your hands being on the ground, kind of limp, and kind of like wet rags that you're just trying to focus on balancing on. Now, in my personal experience, wet rag hands, bad, okay? Because you're not bringing awareness all the way in through your arms there. But if you're mindfully engaging your hands, then you have so much more awareness, strength in your arms, okay? And it's a lot easier to balance. So I know it sounds kind of like duh, but there's so many different components in handstands that sometimes important aspects get forgotten. And you're focusing instead on tucking your hips, so tucking your tailbone so your hips are stacking. Or you're focusing on so much of your legs and engaging all the way up to your toe tips that you forget about your hands. So never forget about your hands. And either actively be pressing them down into the mat, or have your palms lifted away from the earth and you're just pressing down into your fingertips, and figure out which way works best for you. Personally for me, pressing my entire hand down into the mat works for me the best way. And just being up on my fingertips with having a little bit of space there doesn't really feel good on my shoulders, and I don't feel like I have as much control as I do when my hands are just down on that. But other people feel like they have the most control when they're just gripping them out with their fingertips, and that's okay. But go and figure out which way works best for you when it comes to your hands. Now, with your shoulders, you want to have your shoulders engaged, obviously. And by having that awareness in your hands, it allows you to engage your shoulders and the ebb and the flows of your handstand. So I think that's really cool. Also, your elbows. What do you do with your elbows in handstands? They can be bent out a little bit with a little bit of pliableness in them. They can be perfectly straight. It's whatever works for you. When I first go up, I like to have everything pretty rigid, pretty straight. But then once I get up, I like to put a baby bend, a little bit of relaxation into my elbows, so that way, again, I can kind of go with the ebbs and the flows and the changes of my weight and my handstands. And I specifically do that with like a little bit, not like a big bend, but just like kind of like okay, like we're here, we're upside down, let's relax a little bit in my elbows when I want to start playing with different leg variations, when I want to take it into a scorpion, when I want to take it into a split or something fun. Because I know that as I take a different leg variation, my weight is going to shift around a little bit, and I need my elbows and my arms to be able to shift and adjust as my center of gravity shifts, okay? And like I said, hips. Stack your hips directly above your shoulders, okay? And when you're playing in the middle of the room and you're first starting out, that can be hard. You don't really know. You're afraid of shifting your weight, your hips too far forward because you're afraid you're going to flip over. And that's perfectly natural, and that's a perfectly okay fear to have. So if that is your fear, if you're afraid of flipping over, regardless of how, basically if you're first starting out, or if you're if you're afraid of flipping over, or if you're first starting out, go to the wall. Just go to the wall. Play at the wall. I don't know why I had such a hard time getting that out, but just go to the wall. Use the wall to figure out all those little things in your hands and your elbows and in your shoulders, so that way you're not trying to figure that out while you're trying to balance in the middle of the room on your hands and your shoulders. Go to the wall, have your feet on the wall, and figure out the integrity of the pose there, where you have the support and you don't have to worry about falling forward, and somewhere where you can't see, and the only place you're really worried about falling is either side to side, obviously if you take a foot off the wall, or falling back down to the floor behind you if you take a foot off the wall. And I like to be at the wall with my back to the wall, okay? And all those things I just said about falling side to side or falling with your feet back towards the floor, and you don't have to be worried about falling somewhere you can't see, is if your back is to the wall. Other people like doing the L at the wall to work on the stacking of the hips, elbows, shoulders, and wrists. 10 out of 10 recommend that. But when you first start out, to take away the fear factor of falling over behind you where you can't see, do your back to the wall, okay? So yeah, back to the wall when you're first starting out, and then with time, move to the L, so that way you can really practice getting those elbows, wrists, shoulders, and hip stacking. Because when you have your back to the wall, your hips aren't going to stack directly above your elbows and your wrists and your shoulders, because you're going to have kind of a banana back in a way, because your feet are going to be on the wall. But you can always play with taking one or both feet away from the wall if your back's to the wall too. And when you're doing the L in the middle of the room, so your feet are on the wall, your body's at an L, elbows, wrists, and shoulders are stacking, you can always lift one foot up off the wall as well. But if you lift both feet up off the wall, you're going to be in a full handstand in the middle of the room, and you might flip over. So when it comes to the L, just lift one leg at a time. So yeah, now to handstand hops, because I've kind of like broken down where, in words, what it looks like, but I haven't actually shown you. So handstand hops is something that a lot of people call out in class, and you can come in from it from a standing split. That's where I personally like it. Some people do it from our supported warrior 3, our L-shaped pose. Some people do it from a warrior 3. Different people do it from different ways. But what happens when you're doing a handstand hop is you have your hands and your feet anywhere from 6 inches from 2 feet apart. It just depends on what you want your kicking distance to be, right? And you can start out really far, you can start out really close, and with time move your feet in and move your feet back. But figure out the distance that works best for you. Have you noticed I've said figure out what works best for you a couple different times here? Because, and I have, because handstands are so unique to each individual person, because each individual body is so different. And they're very unique to you. And you have to figure out what works best for you when it comes to balancing on your hands and how to get into it. Because every cue, every tip and trick that an instructor offers or a teacher offers is something that works for her or himself. It's something that they've learned from other teachers that works for other students, but that may honestly not work for you. And so everything that I'm offering in this tutorial right now is stuff that I have found that has worked for me and has worked for the majority of my students. But that might not work for you, and that's okay. That's why you have to play. That's why you have to practice. That's why you have to rep things out and just continue to be curious and have fun with handstands. And you can't let yourself get discouraged, because there's some people, like my little brother, for example, he could probably throw a handstand right now and be awesome at it because he is a natural athlete. Me, on the other hand, it's taken me 5 years to get where I'm at. Not because I'm not a natural athlete. Like, I run, I lift, I played basketball. But this kid is just like, could pick up any ball and be perfectly okay, you know, and be really good at whatever sport he picked up a ball in. And that's just not the way I was. And so there's some people that can hit handstand overnight, and then there's other people that just have to work at it and work at it and work at it. And if you're one of those people that has to constantly work at it, that's okay. I'm in that same boat. And you just gotta continue to be fun and be curious and don't get discouraged, you know, because you'll have your good days and your bad days, but you just can't let your 1 or 2 bad days define your entire handstand experience and let your confidence go way down. Random tangent there. But now I'm gonna get back to handstand hops, the regularly scheduled program, right? Anyways, handstand hops. You have your hands anywhere from 2 feet to 6 inches from your feet. And you can lift up whatever leg you want. And I'm going to lift up with my right leg and start with my left leg on the mat. And your leg can be straight out of your hips, like in a warrior 3. You can lift your right leg up as high as you want, like you're in a standing split. It doesn't matter to me. Do what works best for your body. And from here, you come up on to the tippy toes of your foot on the ground, your grounded foot, and you bend that knee, okay? And from here, you hop off of your grounded foot and kick the lifted leg up into the sky too at the same time. And as you jump off of your grounded foot, your lifted leg is going to want to go up towards the sky too. It's where momentum's carrying you, okay? And see here, my elbows, wrists, and shoulders are stacking, and I'm actively pressing my hands into the mat. And look at my shoulders. This is me actively pressing. This is me relaxing. Elbows kind of bent, actively pressing, kind of bent. If you notice my body or my shoulders there, you could tell when they were more relaxed, not actively pressing, and then when I was super duper pressing into the mat, because my body was, you know, maybe a centimeter or 2 higher. At least that's what it felt like to me. And you can kind of notice the pliability of my elbows as my weight shifted back and forth. That's what allowed me to stay up. But notice there, elbows, wrists, and shoulders stacking, hips stacking directly above my shoulders. You noticed one leg was bent. When you're first starting out with handstands, you have to figure out what leg variation works best for you. Stag legs for me is when I'm at my most stable. And those were the legs I just had. One leg straight, kind of straight because I have tight hamstrings, and the other leg was bent at 90 degrees. Now at some point you realized, and I'm not even sure if I had my straight leg stacking directly above my hips the entire time. It might have gone back a little bit once or for a few seconds. It might have gone forward a little bit for a little bit, and that's okay. That's just my body playing with being upside down. I can tell you, my hamstrings are always really, really tight. So I never know what my legs are going to look like in a handstand. I never know if I'm going to be perfectly straight, or I'm going to have one leg kind of back, or the other, or kind of forward, because of my hamstrings. And that's just how it is, okay? And I'll show you a handstand hop with my right leg grounded this time. Lifted leg is my left, grounded leg is my right. And you'll notice as you start playing with handstands, you have a grounded leg that when you kick up off the mat with, it's easier in your handstand. You have more control, you have more strength, and it's just easier. So take note of that, okay? I know personally my left leg is my better leg. That's why I started out with it. That's my better jumping leg, my better grounding leg. And my right needs a little bit of work, a little bit more control, but hey, it's gonna get there someday. So again, handstand hops, this time with my right foot down. I have anywhere, falling, between 6 inches to 2 feet between my hand and my foot. Come up onto my tippy toe, bend my right knee. Left leg can stay up or can come down a little bit, doesn't matter. And you take a breath, and as you exhale, you hop off of the mat. Okay? And you can balance on your hands before you come back down. And then you kick back up, tucking your tailbone to get your shoulders stacking here, engaging all the way to your toe tips. Okay? And maybe with time you straighten a leg all the way up towards the sky, taking a big reverse squat out. The closer your hands are to your feet and hands are together, or your foot is to your hands, or your hand is to your foot, that's what I was initially trying to say, the less your hips have to travel when you jump up, okay? So notice here I have a big gap between my hands and my foot. And so when I jump up, my hips have to float forward a little bit, so that way they're stacking directly above my shoulders. It's not as much as they have to move when you're jumping from downward facing dog to the top of your mat and trying to do a handstand there when you're doing frog jumps or tuck jumps, whatever you want to call them. But it's still more than you do when you have your hands and feet closer together. So here my hands and my foot are closer together. My hips are already kind of stacking directly above my shoulders when I hop up, okay? And so they don't have to travel as far. They're already basically stacking, so I just lift up, okay? Or kick up with that leg. And my hips are stacking, and I don't have to worry about how much movement in my hips and my lower core muscles and my butt I have to do to get my hips stacking. They're already there. So that's another thing, another tip, trick, whatever you want to call it right there. The closer your hands and your feet are, the less your hips have to move. And that's across the board. In my handstand drill video, you'll see that we do like a series of jumps, starting from down dog. Then we come up a little bit, and we walk further up our mat until we finally come into a forward fold at the top of our mat. And with each jump, or each rep, whatever you want to call it, each spot, the distance that our hips had to move got smaller and smaller and smaller. Okay? And I feel like that's something that's super important, because that's one less thing you have to worry about in your handstand. You're jumping up and you're like, okay, are my elbows, wrists, and shoulders stacking? Check. Are my hips stacking above my shoulders? Well, I don't know. Let me worry about getting my hips up towards the top of my mat, towards my shoulders now. That's just an extra thing that you have to work on and focus on. And so yeah, it's just one of those things that come with time. And so if I were you, once you get used to jumping up from your down dog, I would walk my feet in a little bit. Make that distance that your hips have to travel a little less. Go to the wall. Jump up at the wall, okay? Get used to the jumping, get used to the stacking, get used to the pose and balancing on your hands. Because there is a lot of different components and things that you have to focus on in handstand. So I've gone over the lower arms and the hips a ton of times, right? So I'm not gonna repeat those, but is your core tucked in? Are you engaging your core? Is your belly button pulling up and towards your spine? What are your legs doing? Are you engaging all the way to your toe tips? Are you gluing your thighs together? What's going on there? So there's a lot of different areas that you have to pay attention to handstand. And so I would break it down by focusing on one at a time, okay? Go to the wall. I have said that a ton of times, and I know because I mean it. Go to the wall. Focus on one part of handstand at a time at the wall. So just hang out at the wall, get up into a handstand at the wall, and so that way you're not worried about, are you going to fall, what's going on. You can just think about your hands. Worry about your hands. Get that down, come down. Next rep, worry about your shoulders, your elbows, come down. Next rep, worry about your core, your hips, come down. Next rep, toes, feet, legs. Break it down. And let handstand be a journey, okay? It's something that takes a while, like I said, and so just enjoy the journey, have fun with it, okay? I can't stress that enough. So yeah, that's it. This is a super quick tutorial, I know, but there's just so many little things of handstands, and there's so many alignment aspects of handstand that I feel are just so important when it comes to getting this pose locked down and conquering it. So I hope this helps. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me on Instagram. Drop a comment here on YouTube. Drop a comment below on Instagram. Just reach out. I would be more than happy to help you. But I hope this tutorial helps you with your handstand journey. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Namaste.